It's been some time since I've seen a game as divisive as Scorn. While I did enjoy my time with it, I could see where others are coming from who did not. There was so much more that could have been. If you're someone who followed it since day one or a Kickstarter backer, I get the disappointment. Its presentation and atmosphere, its main selling point, is astonishing. The gameplay shows promise, yet falls short with its combat and its puzzles. If there was a game to have puzzles that evoke the wonders of Myst, this was it. Yet Scorn never reaches this level. It's not for everyone, which I can respect, yet you need to be more clear about what to expect from it. If you enjoy the games I cover here, I do recommend Scorn with a caveat. As of writing, it's available on Xbox Game Pass. Else, I would wait until a Steam sale. $40 for a title under 5 hours with next to no replayability is quite steep. I respect and appreciate what the developers were going for here, yet for everything the game does right, in many areas it falls short. It makes Scorn a fascinating yet frustrating experience. I remember seeing Scorn's unveiling back in November 2014. I said neato, and forgot about it as time went on. Like many Kickstarter projects, it went through periods of delays and little communication. Everything that was done up until the middle of 2018 had been reworked. 90% of it was completely scrapped. That's the thing with Kickstarter. You have stakeholders, but they can't demand you to release it. It's when you partner with companies like Microsoft that the foot comes down to get the game out. Even then, there were still delays. And who knows, without the Microsoft deal, when would Scorn come out, if at all? Would it have lingered in Kickstarter limbo? Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time available. Scorn had a small and inexperienced development team with ambition. Yet after all that time, Scorn feels incomplete. Sure, you could say that about a vast majority of games, but it's very evident in Scorn. While Scorn has been divisive, it's not coming from its presentation. It was its main selling point and an attention grabber. It's by far its greatest strength. You could tell where a vast majority of the development time went. The works of H.R. Giger molded into a world to explore. It's a lonely world full of wonder. It's gory, it's mushy, it's erotic. The amount of care and detail put into this world is astounding. Scorn does mix up its visuals throughout. I didn't find it a case of getting repetitive. I had concerns going in that navigation might be difficult in these tight corridors. They could blend in together and easy to get lost. Yet I didn't find that the case. There are subtle cues to guide you around. There's little guidance, instead leaving it up to the player. Something that's become a rarity in the modern landscape of gaming. Scorn has a minimal HUD, which I turned off for most of my time. There are issues that arise with no HUD, which I'll cover in their respective sections. The animations are fantastic. There's a lot of care and weight put into them, especially that one parasite creature. The sound design hammers in this strange world, a mushy, unknown world to us. Music is very minimal here, droning in the background. There are points where it kicks in for, no pun intended, to flesh out a scene. I do wish they did more with the music here, something a little more distinct instead of just droning. It's fine, but the weakest aspect of Scorn's presentation. Gameplay is where Scorn is a mixed bag. We'll be navigating this unwelcoming world, sticking our hands in various orifices. There are some puzzles to solve along the way. Enemies will pop up. We'll have some guns to deal with them. We have limited resources for dealing with them. Let's talk puzzles first. For being this long in development, you would think there would be more elaborate puzzles. You think there would be more of them. I talked about 3 levels of puzzles in my Fear Effect video. The first are palette cleansers, short puzzles that are there for pacing. Think Resident Evil puzzles. The second is puzzles which you toy around with for a while. Then the revelation hits you of what you need to do. Think the Myst titles. Third is where you hit your head against the wall and look it up. When you do, you go, how was I supposed to figure that out? Think some of the 90s point-and-click titles. Each game always seemed to have at least one. For a world like Scorn, it should aim for these second level puzzles like a Myst title, where you're a stranger in a strange land. It shows promise with the first puzzle. Yes, it falls under the first level of being a crane puzzle, but it's introducing us to its world. It could get more elaborate from here. But it doesn't. There are some spinning handle puzzles. They're reasonable, but nothing gets into that second level of puzzles. That kind of figuring out exactly what you need to do. That revelation of when you figure it out and it clicks. That's what Scorn needs more of. Hell, if they had a puzzle or two that falls under the category of how was I supposed to know that, it would be fitting of this world. Yet nothing quite reaches that level. On the issues with the HUD, some puzzles are annoying without turning it on, where there is no indication in which part I have selected. In the last act, a couple new mechanics enter the fold. Scorn has a quick section for each, and then the game ends. The last mechanic shows promise, but all you do is open a door with it. It's used for narrative purposes in the ending. They could have gotten some mileage out of it for puzzles. This setting is rife for deciphering symbols, writing down notes, and recognizing patterns. It's a perfect world to challenge you like Myst. Yet Scorn never challenges you this way. The puzzles here are fine as palate cleansers. They'd be fine in a standard survival horror title, but there need to be more here for a more fulfilling experience. Combat in Scorn is where a number of its flaws arise. One common complaint I've seen is people were expecting more shooter elements. Instead, it takes more of a survival horror approach to combat. If a handful of players were expecting a shooter, that's on the player. If a large number expected it, that's on the developer and publisher. Even leading up to its release, there were many questions. Was this a walking simulator, a puzzle game, a shooter? Being crystal clear about what your game is helps set expectations. Yes, Scorn is a hard title to pin down, but unclear expectations to the customer can put them off when they play it. Scorn has fallen victim to this. But back to the combat. On the presentation front, there's some great stuff about combat. Bringing up the inventory to see how much ammo you have and how many heals is great. Playing with the HUD off, I enjoyed keeping count of how much ammo I had in my gun. I love these stations of filling up ammo and health. So alien, yet we understand what it's doing. Issues arise with health and healing with no HUD. It's hard to gauge if the next hit will kill you. You can look down at your body in Scorn. They could have taken a page out of Jurassic Park Trespasser. Looking down at your body showed your health level. Yes, I can turn on the HUD. With how viable they made ammo count without a HUD, they should have done the same with health. Another no HUD issue arises with the first weapon, the prod, or the dildo gun. It has a cooldown time. With the HUD on, you have the cooldown info. Without the HUD, it's a guessing game. There's no visual or audio cue if it's good to use besides trying again. This messes with the charge if you try to shoot too early. For a title with minimal player assistance, there needs to be some kind of notification the player can pick up on here. Ammo is sparse in Scorn. Save until you need it, or use the dildo gun. Or run past enemies. Enemy attack patterns are easy to pick up on. There are distinct sound cues of incoming attacks. The issue with running past is in the environment. Scorn has ambiguity issues with its environments. You can't jump. Will I be able to move up that incline or not? This isn't much of an issue outside of combat. But when you're trying to run past an enemy and get stuck in the environment and take damage, that becomes an issue. This happened to me several times in my playthrough. It's less about it being narrow corridors and more about the uncertainty of how narrow or wide they actually are. With limited resources, combat has high stakes. I could dig that, but there are some hit detection issues. I found it difficult to gauge the distance of the dildo gun. It felt like a guessing game at points. With how great Scorn looks, the enemies aren't quite up to snuff looks-wise. Great sound cues, great animations, but they don't live up to the environment. They feel generic in a world that is anything but. High-stakes combat can easily fall into frustration. Scorn suffers from this with its checkpoint system. You might encounter a stretch where you're low on ammo and health. Death can send you back a good 5 to 10 minutes if you're not careful. I faced a stretch in the 4th act where that happened. It came down to memorizing when and where enemies would pop out. There's a tricky balance between punishing the player and frustrating them. I'm fine with Scorn making the decision of no quick saves. There's higher tension and higher stakes. But the game needs to be mechanically tight. With wonky hit detection, iffy checkpoints, and some uncertainty if you're able to run past an enemy due to the environment, Scorn is not as mechanically tight as it needs to be. Of all the criticisms for Scorn, the length of the game seems to be the most common. My playthrough was about 5 hours. I didn't sprint often, was capturing footage, did have a couple of iffy checkpoints that added a good 30 minutes or so to my playthrough. Under 4 or 3.5 hours is possible your first time through. The developers said to expect 6 to 8 hours. To be fair, dev estimates are rarely accurate on this front. When you lived and breathed the game for years, it could be hard to judge. Still, it's disappointing to expect a game that ends up being around half as long as you expect. I've seen complaints that for a game this long in development, they were expecting something like 15 plus hours. With what Scorn does, 15 plus hours would be too much and wear out its welcome. There was enough here for a good 6 to 10 hours, I'd say, without overstaying its welcome. For the HR Giger connection, Alien Isolation is an example of a game being too long. As great as that game is, it wore out its welcome. Shaving a couple of hours off its playtime there would have made it better. To an extent, I appreciate the bare-bones story of Scorn. It's all told through the environment. Yet there could have been a bit more of a concrete story. What's happened here? Where are we going? Why are we doing this? Yes, elements of this are present, but there are portions where it seems like things are just there for the sake of it. I have read some excerpts from the art book that goes more into the backstory, of some of the cut areas, of past wars, of the world's inhabitants. More of this should have been present in Scorn. It would flesh out the world more and give more context to our journey. Not that I need to spell it all out. It would have also helped with the length and replayability of the game. The issue with the length falls on 2 other elements. First, there is the release price point of $40. Yes, as of writing, it's on Game Pass. Else, asking for $40 for such a short title is a big ask these days. It's very much a Steam sale kind of game. But the second element I find the larger issue is replayability. Horror titles tend to be short but replayable. They can offer different game modes, different endings, and optional areas to explore. This isn't the case for Scorn. In its earlier stages of development, endings would vary depending on your decisions. Besides the choice of the fate of your friend near the beginning, everything is linear. There's only one ending. There is no incentive for a replay. Like many aspects of its world, Scorn would be ripe for digging in further. But one playthrough is all you need to get the full experience. To me, this is the greater sin that's short runtime, which makes Scorn such a fascinating yet frustrating title. There is something special here. Scorn is a game carried by its presentation and atmosphere. There are some moments that will stick with me for some time. The gameplay shows promise, but fails to match its presentation. There are shortcomings I discussed here that can receive fixing from patches, like the no HUD issues or hit detection. But there are other issues where that won't be the case. It's a title that, beyond presentation, wasn't sure which direction to take it in. I do recommend giving it a spin, but as I said earlier, there is a caveat. It's not for everyone. It's a Steam sale kind of game, a title you play once. But if you're someone who followed it since day one or a Kickstarter backer, I understand the disappointment. Thanks for watching. Do all those things the YouTube algorithm likes. If you'd like to support the channel further, check out my Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. You'll get periodic updates, you'll be featured in the credits, and you'll get access to videos earlier. Thanks everyone. Boulder Punch out.